All right, hello once again, Jeff Scott of Rankin Technical College, and as part of the Rankin Technical College AWD 1000 Web Development Technologies course, I've been creating a series of videos based on the Mozilla Developer Network Learn Web Development series. I'm under the Learned Style HTML with CSS portion and the CSS layout module, which is the last one in the CSS section, and we're talking normal flow. This first sentence that's in here kind of says it all. This article explains normal flow, or the way the web page elements lay themselves out if you have not changed their layout. So in other words, elements on a web page lay out in normal flow if you haven't put any CSS on them. That's it. All right. It says as we begin to discover, you can change how elements behave by adjusting position in that normal flow, or you can remove them from there altogether. But the point is, as it says, starting with a solid, well-structured document that is readable in normal flow is the best way to begin a web page. And then you can go in and start making your changes to it from there. Okay, hopefully that makes at least a little bit of sense. It ensures that your content is readable even if the user is using a very limited browser or a device such as a screen reader. In addition, as normal flow is designed to make readable content, by starting this way, you're working with a document rather than fighting against it as you make changes. All right, so before digging deeper, it says it's worth revisiting some of the things you have studied in previous modules in regard to normal document flow. All right, how are documents laid out by default? As it says here, individual element boxes are laid out by taking the element's content, adding any padding or border or margin around them. All right. And it says there, if that box model, it's that box model thing again. Well, remember, if you have not put any CSS in, then whatever padding, border, or margin that are laid out around these different elements are what are put there by the browser by default. All right. And by default, as it says here, a block level element's content fills the available inline space of the parent element containing it and grows in the block dimension to accommodate it. Again, in other words, it's going to be laid out in a natural type of way, or the way it considers it to be natural. Inline elements, as mentioned there, are the size of their content. You can't set width or height of inline elements because they're inside of block level elements. All right. If you want to control the size of an inline element, you need to set its display to block or inline block. And I guess we'll probably end up going over all that in just a bit. So it says that explains individual elements, but what about elements that are inside or interact with one another? The normal layout flow, again, is the system by which elements are placed inside of the viewport. By default, block level are laid out in a block flow direction based on the writing mode. So again, for us, it's going to be based on our writing mode, which is what? Left to right, a horizontal left to right. All right, each one will appear on a new line below the last one, and they will be separated by any margin that is set on them. All right, as it says, any in English, therefore, or any other horizontal top to bottom, they're laid out vertically, which is pretty much the way that we expect things to happen naturally by default. Inline elements behave differently. And remember, an inline element is something like a strong tag, an M tag, an A tag. As it says, these don't appear on new lines. Rather, they all sit on the same line along with any adjacent or wrapped text content, as long as there's room for them to be there. If there isn't, as it says there, the overflowing text or elements move down to a new line. All right. If two adjacent elements both have the margins set on them and the two margins touch, they collapse. And the smaller one disappears and the larger of the two remain. We've talked about this before as well. So it says, let's look at a simple example that explains this. All right, so I'm going to grab all this. And as I have been doing, I'm not going to add any of the CSS as we start here. So let me just put this in here. And I will move this over just a bit. I'm not going to do a lot of formatting here. It just is taking too much time to do that. So we've got an H1 tag followed by 4 paragraphs. Okay, just fine. So if we save this and we remove any styling from there and we take a look at it, it'll be laid out using normal flow. Pretty much what you'd expect. There we go. All right, it looks like there we've even got an image in there, which is fine. All right. So let's add this. Let's first look at it. We're saying the body has a width of 500 pixels and it should be centered. That's the 0 auto. Paragraphs will have a background color. They'll have a border. They'll have padding. They'll have margin. And any span tags that are in there will have a background of white and a black border. So let's grab these before we go down and take a look at the way that they say there that it's going to look. So I'm going to grab this and I'm going to throw that into my CSS area and my style tags up here. And again, I know we've talked about this before, but typically what you would be doing here, just so you're aware of this, typically what you would be doing here is we'd be using an external file for this CSS. The reason we're not is just that we don't have to kind of mess around with 2 different files. All right, so let's take a look at that. All right, so you can see pretty closely how it's changed, what the 0 auto did, what the coloring did, and how we've set up the different paragraphs. All right. And as it says, inline elements like this one. Notice that's an inline, that's an inline. They remain on the line they're on because they are inside of this block level element. This inline is too big to fit on one line, so it just goes down to the next line. Exactly what you'd expect to have happen there. Again, there we have it. So it says, now that you understand normal flow, it's time to move on and talk about how you can change this. So again, we're working our way through here. As mentioned, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13 sections in here. All right, there are 13 sections. We have so far gone over 1, 2, 3 of those 13. So next, we're going to really slow it down because I want you to be able to understand Flexbox. We'll talk about that, be back with that in just a couple minutes.